Hello, everyone. My name is William Roy, and I just wanted to get on here and start talking. I have had the best of intentions to provide you with videos every week, at least one or two a week, but that just hasn't happened. And I think part of the reason is full transparency here that I felt that I have to script them out word for word, design visual aids for you along the way, and be super prepared. And that's part of me that just really strives for perfection, right? But it's not working. Yeah, I'm not getting you the videos every week. And so I decided what I need to do is just come on here, no script, no notes, no visual aids, and just talk to you for a little bit about what's on my heart and what I think really matters. So here we go. I talk a lot about leadership, and there's a reason for that. For first of all, I have a doctorate degree in organizational psychology, which means applying psychological principles to the workplace. And in that, my area of specialization has been leadership, and more specifically, leadership development. I also have quite a history of leadership at different various levels of leadership, up to and including going from the most entry-level job in an organization to the highest position I've ever had or ever held was a CEO position for a small company. So I have led people. I have led them in church. I have led them in business. I have led them in a variety of contexts. I've made mistakes along the way, and I've worked really hard to rectify those mistakes and make things right. Been a lot of life lessons. And now, at this stage in my life, I've also spent 10 years, a decade, as a leadership researcher. And so that's why my focus is on leadership development. But leadership affects so many things. I worked for a company. So there was this company I worked for. And I started there in an accounting role. Maybe, you know what, maybe I should back up a little bit. So I have 5 degrees. So you might say I'm overeducated, and maybe so. My first degree was a Bachelor of Arts in theology, and the second was Master of Arts in theological studies. And that was my focus for the first 25 years of my life or so. And I'm talking about after high school and after I got out of the Marines. For about 20 years, that was my focus, Christian ministry. I even served on a couple of church staffs. But at some point, I realized my passion is really for business. I do love the church, and I do love the concepts and the ideas that are promoted in Christianity. I don't always agree with church leadership, but that's a whole different issue. But I realized that my entrepreneurial spirit really had a tough time of fitting in with church, because with the majority of people, and I also have found this in business, the majority of people want to maintain the status quo, keep things going the way they've always gone. But I always see areas where we can improve, we can change it, we can make things better, and that's not always well received. So at one point I decided, okay, I'm going to leave this idea of vocational ministry, and I am going to go back to the business world, and I am going to really focus on building a good career and try to be of some good use to some people. So my first degree after that was a bachelor's in accounting. From there, I worked for 2 years as a property accountant. And it didn't fit me very well because, accounting, I respect accountants beyond measure, because they have an ability to sit there and they do the same tasks over and over. They go through the full cycle every month. And then they go through that exact same cycle and do the exact same things the next month and the next and the next. So it's a very routine, predictable kind of job. And there are personality types that are very well suited for it. But my personality was not well suited for it, and I was really miserable. In fact, the last review I had as a property accountant, my supervisor, who, just a side note, we are on good terms. She and I are still friends, and we still go out and have dinner once in a while. Her comments to me in my last review is, you would be a great accountant if you would focus and stay in your chair. Because I like to get up and talk to people, get to know people, find out what's going on in people's lives, encourage people where I could. And that just didn't really work with that job. So after that, I became a trainer. I got more involved in HR type work. So I had a lot more interaction with people, which suited me very well. And I had the opportunity to build things, to build onboarding programs, to build training programs, to build a program of development for that same accounting department, by the way, that would take them from each position. These are the skills you need to master before you're ready to be advanced, promoted into that next position. And it worked really well. In fact, when I started in that position as a trainer, the turnover rate in that department was about 55%. It was a large accounting department, had about 100 people in it, and 55% or 55 of those individuals every year would voluntarily quit the company. High employee turnover. Now, the industry average was around 32 to 33% employee turnover, which is still too high. But in that department, it was 55%. So I came in, I developed an onboarding program. I developed a training program for new hires, and every new hire was trained exactly the same way. And then I designed the training program for professional development. And within 18 months, turnover went from 55% to 3% voluntary turnover. It was a huge improvement. Now, that too was a big life lesson that I learned. And because when I left that position after a couple of years, it only took about 18 months for the employee turnover to begin to ratchet right back up. And the last time I checked in with them, their turnover had reached 72%. So the lesson I learned is that if you don't get leadership on board to embrace and share and really keep people accountable to the system you've developed, then they will go right back into their old ways, and you'll start to lose people again. So since then, that was a long time ago, but since then I've grown, I've developed, I've become pretty good at reducing employee turnover because I've realized, and here's where I'm going to tie it all together, I've come to understand that employee turnover, or the lack of it, really starts with leadership and the development of your leaders and how you're making that available in your organization. Good leader, low turnover. Poor leaders or toxic leaders, high employee turnover. And it's not just turnover. So it produces bad leadership, produces high employee turnover because you have very low employee engagement. And incidentally, the last report I looked at, only 13% of employees in the United States are counted as highly engaged in their jobs. So you have disengaged employees, which reduces in low job satisfaction and high employee turnover, but it doesn't stop there. It doesn't just affect the organization, because the amount of turnover we're experiencing costs companies a lot of money and a lot of productivity. It reduces a company's productivity when employees aren't happy, aren't well taken care of, and are disengaged. It affects the nation's annual gross domestic product, or GDP. And the estimates are that in this country, the United States, low employee engagement, high employee turnover such as it is, means a reduction of about 8% of our gross domestic product. So it affects the nation as a whole. That, I say, just to illustrate that this is a serious national problem that we need to get a handle on. And I have a solution. Well, that's enough for today. I will come back with this really kind of raw, unedited video, and we'll start to talk about what the solution is in my perspective. Have a great night, and we'll see you later.